How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Viral Virtue. It's your favorite apostates. I'm McKay,
I'm Jordan.
and we're back to wrap up this season of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. I know we took a long time, but if you missed it, we were watching 2 episodes at a time over several weeks with the patrons and the members over on the Discord. So we warned you beforehand. We were posting about it and everything. And if you follow us on our socials, you definitely would have known about it. But if you missed out, then obviously this time you missed out. And you'll just have to wait until the second half of the season. Ooh. Spoilers. There's more to this season. There's going to be some spoilers in this video. So if you have not watched,
there's your warning.
This is your warning. First thing we'll talk about is predictions that we made and what actually kind of came about. And then, we're just going to kind of dive into everything. So if you have not watched, now's your chance. Turn back. And then
do not collect $200.
Yes.
Do not pass go.
Do not pass go. Go straight to watch it. Or if you don't care, you're not going to watch it,
Why are you here?
I'm not your dad.
I'm confused.
Before we get along with the episode, let's hear a word from our sponsor, MeUndies. Guys, let's talk about the MVP of your wardrobe. The one thing that should never let you down, your underwear. If you're anything like me, it was time for an upgrade, right? And I did with the ultramodal ball caddy boxer briefs from MeUndies. Ball caddy is really the perfect way to describe the way that these underwear feel. These game-changing briefs are designed for next-level support. No squishing, no sticking, just pure cloud-like comfort. MeUndies' signature softer than soft ultramodal fabric is breathable, stretchy, and oh so comfy, making it ideal for our all-day wear, which, coming from garments and not having anything, is nice to have lots of options that are all comfortable.
They also use sustainably sourced materials. And if you're not happy with your first pair, it is on them.
Like we said, there is a myriad of different cuts and styles and
Very
patterns. Cute. They're all really awesome, trendy things. So there is definitely something for everybody.
Slide into game-changing comfort with MeUndies. You can support the show by going to meundies.com/JNM and using our code JNM to get 20% off your first order, plus free shipping.
Make sure you go down to the link down in the description or type in what you just heard in the URL box and go and get your first pair now. And thank you to MeUndies for sponsoring this episode.
If you're new here and you're wondering, why am I going to listen to these two yahoos talk about this on the internet, or why do you listen to us about any... I'm not the moral authority on anything. I can't really answer that question for you. But if you're wondering why we talk about this, it's because we were Mormon for a very long time. We got married in the temple. We did the whole song and dance. We did all this stuff. So that gives us some insight into what's happening in the show that might be interesting. And then I'm also a licensed therapist, and one of the most common questions that I get asked when we watch this is like, what are your thoughts from a therapist perspective on this? Again, none of this is therapeutic advice. This is just me giving my unsolicited, professional, non-professional, sometimes personal opinion on a reality TV show, which is non-reality. Am I right?
A bit of a misnomer on that one.
So if you're curious about any of that or anything else that we might say that's unhinged, that happens a lot, then feel free to stick around, hang out, come gander with us.
Little geese.
We have fun here.
Before the season started, we did kind of like a little recap and just a little preview. We hadn't seen anything at the time. It hadn't even been released. If you want to see that, you can go over here in case you haven't seen it. If you've already watched the show, then there's not really much reason to that. But at the end of that one, we made some predictions for what we would see next season. As an amateur trash TV watcher, I feel like my predictions were pretty few. But Jordan had a lot more in-depth insight, being a more veteran trash TV enjoyer. So
damn right.
Let's go check those out. We'll just roll them real quick and we'll see what we got right. I felt like the whole like Macy getting messages from someone who
From Dakota's
Dakota was seeing,
somebody. Yeah.
it kind of felt like a red herring to me. I
Yeah.
feel like that's like a whole just going to be a fizzle out, even though it was kind of like the big
Thing at the
cliffhanger
time. Yeah.
at the end of season 1. I feel like it was just to kind of secure their spot to get re-upped anyway. But I feel like now that Miranda is on board, that's probably going to take the front seat on all the drama. But I am interested to see the resolution of the whole Whitney situation, because that kind of didn't get any sort of resolution at the end of last season either.
I think so. Here are just some. I think Demi or Jesse becomes the villain this season. One of them two or both. I think the plot point about the whole Dakota thing will fizzle out. I think her and Dakota will be on and off again the whole season. We'll maybe get like some kind of wraparound resolution between the two of them at the end to like be good co-parents together. And I think they'll be on and off again throughout the whole season. Miranda will integrate into the group. Fine. I don't think there will be any issues there. I think they will try to make it seem like there's contention between her and Taylor, but I don't think there is. I think Whitney tries to come back and get reintegrated into the group because she's regretting seeing herself out in such a stupidly dramatic way. And I think the girls don't want to let her back in, but I think if she sides with the girls instead of siding with whoever the villain in this season is, then maybe she stands a chance. But
Right.
she also might be dumb enough to side with the villain, which means that her and potentially Demi would be on the outs. And then I think Michaela becomes more of a mean girl this season. I think Michaela did not have enough screen time last time to really get a feel for her personality. I think she's meaner than we think she is, which I'm here for. Mean girl energy has its place, right? And I think Layla continues to be a background character. I think Jen and Zach are trying to do a redemption arc for him this season, but I think he's just too much of a skis bag. It's not going to work. Nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to care. There will be some kind of pregnancy drama, would be my
You're
guess.
not going to change my mind on Zach.
No. And they've got to tie in some Mormon drama, I feel like, somewhere. I feel like maybe they'll tie in backlash from the first season, like people in their wards for the still active girlies, because it's still up in the air on like who's really active or not. I think Macy and Michaela and Whitney are all still active, last I heard. If we think of last season, kind of our saints and sinners mix. But Taylor still goes to church sometimes. I don't even consider Taylor Mormon. I'm sorry, Taylor. But
yeah, just free yourself.
Just free yourself from it.
Free
at this
yourself
point.
from this.
I am a prophetess.
Seriously, I mean, I'm not very good at making predictions on that front, right? But goddamn, I could have missed the whole season and just listened to what Jordan said. And there it is.
It's almost like I was Mormon and I'm very familiar with Mormon culture. And I don't watch a lot of reality TV, but I watch very curated reality TV. And so I kind of have a feel for, I feel like what's going to land and what's going to not. But
they need to hire you.
I've also been lucky. I don't know.
They need to hire you.
I guess.
Hulu, if you see this, you already know. She's too busy to accept it, but it would be nice to get a little.
It would be nice.
A little consultation or something. Now, even though Jordan was basically able to read this whole season like a fucking book, there was a lot of high energy, high drama moments.
This was definitely more intense than season 1.
Definitely. And in not like a very, I mean, it's reality TV. It makes great reality TV, even if it does make people look kind of bad.
Yeah, for real. It does. So I'm not going in any particular order here. I asked you guys for questions, comments on Instagram about what you wanted us to talk about, and then I kind of made my own notes from the season. So we'll start with one of the most controversial, in my opinion, which was the dinner outside barbecue style Mormon family dinner with Taylor and her family, her parents in particular. And it was very messy.
I feel like there was kind of a lot to catch up with, like explaining the dynamic away throughout the rest of the season, because starting it off so early in the season and getting such a bad taste in your mouth for who Taylor's mom and her stepdad are,
Yeah.
especially her stepdad,
Mm-hmm.
was just so incredibly hard to get away from. It was that bad. Particularly with how they put a lot of the blame of Taylor and Dakota's relationship onto Taylor,
Mm-hmm.
which was really gross. And then more particularly for me, and I know a lot of people agree on that, but just the way that her stepdad interacts with her is just like incredibly inappropriate and ultra misogynistic. There was one instance in particular at that same event where he was asking what she was going to wear for Halloween, to this Halloween party that they're doing. And she said a cat like Gretchen Wieners in Mean Girls, right? And he's like inquiring if it's going to be a sexy cat or
Why do you
what?
care? She's a whole ass adult.
She's a whole ass adult and she's the daughter of your wife. So that's a little odd.
So, one of the most common questions that I got on Instagram was, why is Taylor's mom like that? Why is Taylor's dad like that? Like, we had this whole arc of like
More than
Taylor's.
why does Taylor's mom look like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, that alone is a valid question. Why is she trying to look like Taylor?
Right.
You know, like, that's just weird.
There's a
right?
lot to unpack there.
There is a lot to unpack there. So, you could take this a variety of directions. The most broad but also somewhat specific direction that I could describe this, especially in the culture of Mormon context, is enmeshment. So enmeshment is very common in Mormon families because the religious framework within Mormonism essentially supports enmeshment. So I have this nice little circle diagram for you that describes some of the things that you see in enmeshment in families. And remember, I'm a licensed therapist. I see people in Utah. I see Mormons all the time. And this is a hallmark of a Mormon family dynamic. These are things that you're going to see basically in, I would say, probably 90% of Mormon communication, family boundary dynamics that exist. So
even in our own family dynamics, we've
100%. 100%. Mormonism is the structure that allows enmeshment to thrive, essentially. So let's look at these things. Number one, in my opinion, anytime these things are coming up in the proper context, lack of boundaries, lack of privacy. That's numero uno. Trying to control and or over-focusing on how your family might appear to others. This is especially poignant in this case because Taylor's mom, Leanne, is very concerned with how she appears to others. And so concerned with how she appears to others that she's even like besties with people that Taylor had like ended relationships with, like Chase and Miranda before the beginning of the show. So like that's inappropriate, generally speaking. Like it's one thing to like be acquaintances with people for like social or like, you know, occupational reasons, but to like go out of your way to be friends with these people, like,
Right.
it's giving red flag. I don't want that. And hallmark of Leanne right here is parental over-involvement in relationships. Now, this ties directly into boundaries, right? Leanne doesn't have any boundaries. There is no, like, the way that I describe this when I'm talking to clients about it is bubbles. Like, everybody in a family dynamic has their own bubble, and your bubble is supposed to be distinct and separate from everybody else's bubble. If you grow up in a high-demand religion, then everybody's bubbles are touching. Everybody's bubbles are overlapping. Sometimes they're on top of each other. Sometimes they're popping each other. Sometimes there's no sense of a bubble at all because everybody's just in one giant bubble. Like, that's the best way that I could describe this to you. And so if there is no bubble, if there's no boundaries, if there's no, I respect that this is what you've asked me to do and I'm not going to involve myself in your relationships, and I see you as a separate entity than me, and therefore I'm not going to handle things in your life the way I would handle them in mine, because we are two separate individuals. We are not the same person. And so Leanne doesn't have that. I think Leanne sees herself as Taylor physically. Like, this is one of the most extreme cases, I think we could say, of this, is physically she's even trying to like morph herself into Taylor. And then she's also inserting herself into Taylor's life, relationships, drama. And it's not to say that you can't have healthy conversations with people in your life about things that are going on in your life and relationships and whatnot. But if you have beef with a woman and then your mom shows up at the Christmas party to talk to that woman, like, we have crossed so many boundaries. I don't even know that Leanne knows what a boundary is. Like, because we've crossed so many to get to that point, right? And then your mood revolves around a family member's emotional state. This is where a lot of people develop hypervigilance. They're very aware of what other people are thinking and feeling around them, because in toxic family dynamics, if there's things like codependency, then people don't talk about the things that they should be talking about. It's not like, oh, hey, I have a boundary with you, or, oh, hey, I need to manage my emotions. It's, I'm feeling massive emotions and everybody else around me needs to adjust, figure it out, deal with it. And so people have adaptive coping mechanisms, adaptive or maladaptive, that they use to cope with that. So again, that we don't see as much here, but I think we see explosive emotions often from Taylor, which are very
Right.
indicative of a lack of regulation that's often taught in families, you know? And then feelings of guilt or disloyalty when saying no to a family member. Like saying, I can't come to that thing, or I'm not going to go to that, or I can't help you with that right now, or I'm not going to have that conversation with you. And this is why there's a lack of boundaries, because we're so worried about the emotions of the other person or the emotional or mental state of that other person. We don't want them to blow up. We don't want them to get mad at us. Like, because there's no distinction between their emotions and my emotions, I'm going to protect them. And so I feel bad when I have boundaries with them. Now, this is pretty common in Mormon dynamics. Trying to get Mormons to have boundaries is like swimming against the tide. Like, it feels very foreign to most Mormon people to have boundaries in a healthy way, because it feels like, oh, that's wrong. That's hurtful. I'm going to hurt their feelings. They're going to be upset with me. And all of those things very well might be true, but that's okay. Like, and that's
Right.
where extra support comes in navigating how to deal with somebody who might react to something like that explosively. But also putting yourself first feels like you're betraying your family. I mean, this in essence is a nice little pointed summary about what enmeshment can look like. There are other things that could be part of this outside of these examples. But when you think about why is Taylor's family like this is why. It's inappropriate to comment on somebody's body in most cases. That's a sign of lack of boundaries. Like, we're not just talking about communication boundaries. We're talking about physical boundaries. We're talking about emotional boundaries. We're talking about spiritual or religious boundaries. You're not entitled to know where I am in my faith journey. When I'm ready to talk to you about that, I'll let you know. Like, that's what we're talking about with this. And if there is none of that, then my dad can say whatever the he wants about what I'm wearing, and it's often going to be inappropriate. Like, is there some things that could be happening with him there? Sure. Was it misguided? Was it a bad edit? Who the knows? But I think this kind of sums up pretty interestingly what might be happening in the Frankie family dynamic.
The church is just like a cesspool for this kind of behavior, because the teaching behind the church is that the family is the most basic unit of the church. Families go to wards go to, or make up a stake, stakes make up regions, and so forth. It's really easy for people to fall into the pattern of, it's not just me, it's the whole family, because we are the unit. Everybody in this household is a unit. So it's just super conducive to this kind of behavior. And that's why it's so common. That's why you see it in all kinds of, that's how we saw it in our own families and everything like that. It's really common. It's awful.
I think it's also, I think there's something to be said for, because of the patriarchal nature of Mormonism, in Mormon relationship dynamics, I feel like we are very quick in Mormon culture to vilify women. So like in a dynamic where Dakota's bullshit and Taylor's bullshit are both at play in this cycle, instead of focusing on, oh, hey, here's some areas that Dakota is up. Like, here's some areas that he could really take ownership.
Take ownership right now.
And like do what he's supposed to do, right? But instead of focusing on that, no, we're just going to talk about Taylor. Like, we're just going to talk about Taylor. Like, I'm not saying that they don't both contribute massively to why their relationship is the way it is, because they do, obviously. But for all of them to just put all of the blame, it felt like, or like the accountability, if you will, on Taylor and nothing on Dakota, while he's just sitting there like, give me a reason for that, other than also slut shaming that, well, you're the one that's there with him every night. And like, yeah, I think that's stupid. Like, if you don't want to be with this man, don't sleep with him. But also,
harping on that,
why is your family involved in that conversation?
Right.
Like, generally speaking, you might have a really good relationship with a parent and it's fine to talk about those things. In this kind of toxic family dynamic, I don't believe it's beneficial for Taylor's parents to know about her sexual conquests or whatever you want to call them. I don't care if she's laying a dude every night. I don't care if she never has sex again. Like, truly, it doesn't matter to me. But what I fear is Taylor's family dynamic is they're going to weaponize that information against her and then shame her, blame her. And what does that do for her? She's already clearly struggling with her self-esteem. Like, what does that do for anyone? And so I think the patriarchal church dynamic, I don't think we can stray from it at all in these conversations. Like, it's just a constant, like, filter down into whatever we're talking about.
Most of these conversations that they had, it just felt like they were lecturing a teenager.
Uh-huh.
And, like, Taylor's a grown-ass woman. She has kids. Like, she's in her 30s.
Uh-huh.
Why are we treating adult children like they're teenagers? Because, I mean, regardless of your opinions on her behavior or whatever, she's an adult. She is able to make her own decisions and do all this shit. And you're not in charge of her. Like,
1000%.
a teenager is 100% different because you are in charge of a teenager. And
to some degree.
Yeah, they still get their own privacy and things like that. But you're in charge of their safety. And obviously, you want to make sure that people aren't taking advantage of them and things like that, of that nature. But she is a grown-ass woman. Boom. Boom.
Okay, so another thing that came up a lot is a theme that the girls, I think, talk about a lot in the show, which is like, what is the purpose of Mom Talk? Will Mom Talk survive? I don't know. Like, what is the purpose? And like, you always hear them say, like, we're supposed to be lifting each other up.
This isn't what Mom Talk is all about. Most of the time that you ever hear anything about what Mom Talk is all about, it's what it's not all about.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So what is Mom Talk and what was it before it got a reality TV show? And was it uplifting then? I don't know. I can't really say. I don't feel like it was.
Right.
But.
Well, here's what I remember Mom Talk being. Thirst traps and rage bait.
Uh-huh.
So
that about sums it up.
If it meant something more to them than what was being posted
I love
online,
that for you.
That's great. I'm glad. If their friendship was the uplifting bit of it, and they were just making rage bait and thirst traps, that's great. Honestly,
who cares? It doesn't bother me. But I think the question that I come back to when they say things like that is like, you know, we're supposed to be lifting each other up, and we're supposed to be like, we're empowering women. And I'm like, what are we empowering women to do? Is my question. Because on some level, I think this is where we get into nuance, right? On some level, these women are the breadwinners in their families. They are doing something that is extremely non-traditional in terms of the Mormon gender roles. And I can hold space for all that, and I love that.
Right.
I love people finding a dynamic that works for them, generally speaking. Like, great. But I think sometimes that the Mom Talk girls inflate this to be something more than what it is. Because, like, we're encouraging women to work. Is that what we're empowering? Like, we're empowering women to, like, take control of their finances. And I'm all here for that. Like, I love that. But something that I think we have to kind of hold also is that, like, what the Mom Talk women are advertising is something that's not attainable for most women. Like, I think most people would love the idea of, like, posting a picture on Instagram that takes, like, 10 minutes and making, like, $10,000 off of that post for doing, like, barely any work at all. And I think that's great. But, like, what exactly does this do for people who are watching the show? Because, like, it empowers you to be an influencer. Yeah, everybody would love to be an influencer. But is that realistic? Like,
Right.
Not everybody can be an influencer. Not everybody's going to have the personality, the time. So, like, are we empowering women to work, or are we empowering women to be influencers? And is that going to be successful? Because I see a lot of people in their attempts to become influencers. I wouldn't even call us influencers. Like, I wouldn't even wear that label. And I feel like lots of people want that label and can't get it.
And for some, it's just like a mark.
Right.
Like, oh, you're an influencer? Oh, yeah, no.
But it's...
Well, and is it for Mormon? At one point or another, maybe they were like, this is to show that Mormon women can be empowered to do what they want. Where you know, in my opinion, I think that is something that's good, but like, how are we doing that? Are we showing Mormon women that they don't have to wear their garments in order to show their dedication to God? I think that's a great idea, but that's just not the truth within the Mormon paradigm.
Well, I just don't think it's realistic because, like, if we're empowering women, I mean, this isn't empowering women to pursue careers. Like, this
Right.
isn't empowering women to become doctors or accountants, or what if they want to pursue something where they're not the breadwinner? Like,
Right.
what if Mormon women want to take a job that's really not going to pay them an inordinate amount of money like a lot of these women are getting right now? And what if they want to do that? Are they still going to be as encouraged? Because is their husband going to see that with merit when she's not making more than him and it doesn't really make financial sense? Like, do you see where it starts to fall apart?
Right. And then where do they end up?
Right.
MLMs, probably.
Like, and is a Mormon husband going to go for that? I don't think so. I think Mormon husbands in this dynamic have no choice.
Yeah. We saw how that worked with Jen and Zach in last season.
Right.
He was, I mean, at least as portrayed on the show, kind of hurt by the idea that she was going to be making more money than him, even with his potential career as a doctor, which has since basically faded into obscurity.
Yep.
So, I don't know. It's
like, I don't think, like, I think the only reason that the Mormon men in this show are okay with this dynamic is because financially, I can't argue with that. Financially,
Right.
if you're bringing in millions of dollars and I'm making $100,000 a year, like, it doesn't make sense for me to be like, no, you can't work. You see what I mean? Show me where that dynamic is happening, where a woman is not making more money than he is, and they're still encouraging that dynamic, and he's saying this doesn't make financial sense. This fiscally doesn't make sense, even though it's your passion. I don't care. Like, that's why I think this is something that can't be generalized onto the Mormon population, because I don't think it will work. Again, there's nuance to be had here. Anything that upsets the traditional Mormon dynamic in a healthy way is great in my mind. But I think we have to be careful not to take it too far.
Yeah.
Like, that this is some, like, magnetic, charismatic movement of feminism that's happening on. I don't think it is. Like, I really don't.
Ultimately, we have to acknowledge that it's just a reality TV show about influencers that get together and they're all Mormon.
And it takes me out of it
adjacent
a little bit from, like, a reality TV show perspective. It's like, it's almost like, you know, when you're reading a book and they make like a very current reference, and it kind of like takes you out of it because you're like, what? Like, I don't love that. That's what this does for me when they're like, this isn't what Mom Talk is about. And I'm like, no, Mom Talk got here for being stupid, like, rage baity videos that people are like rage commenting. You're not their grandma. Like, that's where we started with all this. I don't think this was really ever necessarily about empowerment. I think empowerment was maybe a side effect of this. But I don't know. Again, this is just me having a nuanced conversation about it, and I'm being a bit more critical than I have been in the past, but I think it warrants criticism. And I think Jessie might be a good exception to this rule because, you know, Jessie is the only one out of all the other Mom Talk girls that has a job aside from their job of taking care of their children. Like, Jessie actually works. And Macy
with
has
Baby
her
Mama,
company now.
They didn't really talk about that this season.
Not as much, no. So I feel like, yes, there might be exceptions to the rule, but again, I'm questioning the whole empowerment narrative, and the main reason that I want to apply criticism here is I think they can take it further.
Right.
Like, take this and take it further. Make this generalizable to the population. Like, if you want to make a difference, if you're truly about empowering women, take this and go further. Like, that's the point in my mind of this criticism is like, can we take it farther than this to really apply this in a deeper contextual level that applies to the average Mormon woman, right? Like, can we take this further? Because I think that would be fantastic. Let's not just stop here with, yes, you can become an influencer, and if you make more money than your husband, he'll let you quit. Because that's what I think is happening in probably a lot of these dynamics. Lots of nuance. Take a deep breath if you're mad at me.
Jordan, it's not that deep.
This is just my opinion.
Jordan, it's not that deep.
I know.
Let's get back.
I know. Let's go back to the shallow
drama,
end, shall
please. Let's go back to the shallow end.
So something else that I'm going to bring up that I haven't necessarily seen anybody talk about, but I'm seeing a theme, is one, there's like a lack of accountability.
You're bullshit. Take ownership right now.
Which I think a lot of times can be tied back to enmeshment culture, codependency. A lot of the girls I feel like are dysregulated emotionally a lot of the time. It's really hard to not get defensive about taking accountability when you're dysregulated. So like if you are feeling emotionally volatile and someone's coming at you and you know you need to take accountability, it's going to be really hard to do that in that space when you're emotionally dysregulated.
Take ownership.
Take ownership, literally, right? So I think, one, that's an interesting thing that I want to point out. But two, as a consequence of that, I think Mormons have a really hard time with things that are not black and white, things that are more ambiguous. Mormons like to categorize things in boxes because it helps us. It makes more sense, right? If we say this is this is that, this is black, this is white, like it makes our lives easier.
This is sin, this is obedience.
Right. So you get really good at that in Mormonism because there is no gray in Mormonism. There's gray, but they ain't going to talk about it. The only black and white is like, you should be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be wearing your garments. You shouldn't not be wearing, like, you shouldn't be taking your garments off to walk around the neighborhood. Like, it's very black and white, right? So because of this becomes a thinking pattern. This becomes how people view the world. This is how people structure their lives. And so when things don't fit into that black and white narrative, it gets really uncomfortable. Mormons, and I've seen this with other religious people too, Mormons' tolerance for ambiguity is ass. It's ass. And I say this as a person who had zero tolerance for ambiguity at the beginning of my journey also. To sit in discomfort as a Mormon is not something that is generally allowed, right? Like that's why they have thought stopping. That's why they have these manipulative techniques that keep you in the religion, because if you sit in the gray area for too long, some shit starts to kind of not feel good, right? Like things start to feel not okay. So I see this with the girls in their, I'm going to vote you off the island mentality. Because there's discomfort in these different relationships and people fighting. Who are we voting Whitney in or out? Is Demi in or out? Is Taylor in and out? Are we going to allow Miranda in or not? Because all of these relationships have very ambiguous things that cause discomfort and contention among the girls. And because they don't like that, the answer is get out. There's no, how can we repair? What would that look like? What does this mean for the culture of our group? Is this part of our group values? I think they try to do that sometimes, but I think the underlying discomfort pushes them into make a black and white decision. Is Whitney in or is she out? Is Demi in or is she out? Are we kicking Taylor out or not? Like there's no tolerance for discomfort. It's just easier to remove the problem, plop it out, so it's not an issue anymore. So I don't have to feel bad anymore. It's also Mean Girl-esque, you know, that's where it gets kind of petty.
Mormon Mean Girls.
Mormon Mean Girls.
It's just so, and you're totally right about the whole like limbic black and white thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I remember a Sunday school teacher telling me that his favorite commandment was the tithe because it is the most black and white commandment that there is.
Mm.
You either pay your full tithe or you don't.
Yeah.
And I mean, growing up from there, I learned that, oh yeah, okay, there's also people who are tithing on their gross pay and people who are tithing on their take-home pay.
True.
And so it's not really that easy, but that's what they like. A lot of people can say, oh, I feel that the Book of Mormon is a true testament of Jesus Christ because there are men who saw the plates and to the ends of their lives, they were always certain and testified that they had seen the gold plates that Joseph Smith had presented.
Yeah.
But as soon as you go, have you considered that maybe they lied?
No. Don't like that.
No, they would never do that. Well, how do you know?
You don't. That's the point.
And you get to this point when you're deconstructing where at some point or another, a lot of people are like, I don't even fucking care if there were plates or not, because all of the other stuff just adds up to be bad. And this is something that they are largely incapable of in a lot of cases with all those things that you had listed. It's just, we can't even consider the alternatives because that's just not how it works.
Yeah.
It's not something that we are going to entertain. Another thing that we talked about even last season with everybody we were doing the watch party was the ketamine thing.
Whitney and I did ketamine.
It came back up, and if you are unaware, Mormons live by a so-called health code called the Word of Wisdom, which prohibits the consumption of tobacco, illicit drugs, tea, coffee, classified as hot drinks. So there's a lot of people who try to sneak that one in there. And other substances like that that aren't prescribed by a doctor. So when we're watching the show and it seems like some of the gals are doing ketamine for therapy, which normally would be an exception because it's
Sure.
something that you're under the care of some sort of practitioner or provider or something of those along those lines. But the way that they seem to have been using it in some of the cases, it seemed a little bit in a morally gray area, which is really interesting coming off the heels of the whole black and white thing
Yep.
conversation we were having.
Okay, so let me give you a little background on ketamine, and then I will also give you my personal opinion about it. So ketamine is, in my opinion, one of the newer, it's been around for a long time, but insurance has just started to come around in recent years to even approving ketamine for treatment. So in recent years, it has become more accessible. It is still very inaccessible because this is how it works, particularly with insurance and in the United States. But ketamine is essentially designed to treat treatment-resistant depression. Treatment-resistant being you have probably had this disorder for years, if not longer, and it has not responded to anything you've tried. Traditional talk therapy, different kinds of therapy, medication, everything that you've thrown at this depression, it has not responded to. And that's where ketamine, in my opinion, really shines, is it allows for a very, we're targeting a very specific part of the brain. It's doing some very deep transformative work for a lot of people, can power through some really complex trauma stuff. I think there is a lot of power in ketamine, specifically for people who have basically tried everything else and have not got what they needed. I don't have anything personally against ketamine. I think it has its place and I think it can be quite effective, and I've heard plenty of people who have had positive experiences, right? But the problem that I have with ketamine in this context is I personally believe that the show displays ketamine very irresponsibly. And I think it does it to highlight what we've just described, which is Mormons aren't allowed to use illicit substances, right? This isn't necessarily an illicit substance, but there's still some there's a lot of hubbub around well, can Mormons really be doing that? There's even conversation around recreation, weed for medicinal use for people who actually have a card, or that's still controversial.
That's stuff like medicinal THC and everything like that is still on you should consult your bishop for guidance on that particular issue, even if
so
it is something.
This would not be any different, in my opinion.
Right. Well, and like Jordan was saying, it's kind of almost recreate, and obviously I don't care if someone is recreationally using a substance or whatever. That has nothing to do with me or anything of the sort. But it seems like they're portraying this as recreational use under the guise of it being therapeutic. Because I mean, you look at the place that they went to, Zach and Jen, to receive this treatment. It was just in somebody's house, or at least that's what it felt like. And then it didn't seem like they were there. And obviously I am not qualified to really be talking about this, but it just seemed like it was commodified in a very Utah way.
Yeah.
And if you're from Utah, you know what I'm talking about, where people just they get certified in whatever you're going to do. You get your esthetician license or whatever, and then you start, doing lash extensions out of your basement or whatever. You're a hair salon in your basement. So people get certified or, licensed to do ketamine therapy, and then they just are doing it in their home. Obviously, there's probably a lot more that's going on behind the scenes that we're not seeing, but it just seemed like it was very blasé about something that should be kind of taken seriously, and a professional monitoring you and everything. Obviously, they're just showing what they want us to show. Maybe they're just wanting to get the point across that they're doing something, but it seemed yeah, rather irresponsible the way that they're portraying it.
So in my mind, it's reality TV. So a lot of this is edited, right? So who knows the extent of how much they did, if there was a therapist there to navigate it with them, the professional that was providing it. Like, it's not easy to get licensed to provide ketamine. Like, therapists can't do it. Psychologists, I don't even think can do it. Like, you have to have some kind of medical license, is my understanding. And so generally speaking, it's regulated to some degree, but here's the problem. Like, here's what it comes down to ultimately. A lot of people, unfortunately, in our current society lack critical thinking skills. So they're not going to do what you and I are doing and necessarily view this through a critical lens and go, I wonder how many times they went, or I wonder if they had a therapist to navigate this with them. They're just going to think this is the norm. They're going to think, oh, if I have a problem with my husband, I can just go and do a ketamine session with him and then it'll be life-changing. It'll change our life. It might, but here's the thing. What is ketamine going to do for a communication problem? Okay, this is where I start to have problems. I don't want to underestimate the power of ketamine if you have personal issues and things going on, but a lot of times in a relationship we have long-held patterns. And you have to be taught skills how to disrupt those patterns. You have to have somebody with you saying, that's happening right now. What's happening right now? You're doing it again. Let's explore what's going on for you. Because it's really, really hard to be in a pattern or be in a cycle and think, oh, I'm doing that thing again. Like, that's why people go to couples therapy. It's fucking hard, right? This is where my beef lies, is I don't think it is effective or responsible to show this to people and be like, oh, our marriage is so much better now because we did a ketamine session. Like, huh? I'm not saying in other contexts that might be helpful, but I look at these two who have on screen some of the most toxic relationship dynamics I've seen in a reality TV show and go, yeah, this is not the sole solution to your problem. It is not. It might help, but I think it is irresponsible to portray this as something, and they describe it as like, oh, it totally changed our marriage. And like, I think Demi and her husband has talked about it that way. And I just think without the full story, it's irresponsible. Like, it's irresponsible. And it's not necessarily even on the part of the people in the show to be accounting for that. But I think it's slimy of producers and editors. And I get that they only have time and things, but when you're dealing with mental health, this is delicate. Like, these are really important things, really important considerations to be making. Like, I personally, my thing with ketamine is like, yes, if you feel like it's going to be good for you and it feels like it's going to be helpful, or you've got major depression or treatment resistant or lots of trauma, then by all means go for it. But I also, in my personal opinion, this isn't professional, this is just personal, I think you have to be careful of ketamine. For some people may allow some degree of avoidance. Like, I don't want to work on this shit that I know I need to work on, so I might go over here. And that's not going to be the majority of people that are doing ketamine, right? But it might. Like, let's do ketamine instead of sitting down with a couples therapist and actually seeing what the is going on in our relationship, right? Like, you might go to a couples therapist and they might tell you, yeah, both of you go to individual therapy and figure your shit out and then come back to me. Like, that might be what you get, but that's not what I want to happen. Is for people, like, some people might selectively avoid a certain kind of therapy that might be more beneficial because ketamine is like more trendy and all the rage. And what if that's not actually targeting the issue? What if that's not actually targeting the problem? You know, are these massive issues on a massive scale? No, not really. These are my personal beefs. And if you have a problem with them, then that's fine. I don't really care. But I think the irresponsibility of it all with ketamine got on my nerves.
I feel like it's just kind of chaperoning it down the route of like pop psychology, where they take something that's probably pretty useful. And stuff like that, or like therapy in tandem with psychedelics and things. There's lots of research that are showing positive outcomes for people who are at their wits' end trying to find some sort of treatment to get them help and to, just be able to live a day-to-day life. But then we see it turning into like this glorified, like, oh, let's take a little trip. Oh, let's go appropriate indigenous medicines, and we'll take a little trip and have a thing, or it's just becoming like this thing to do instead of like putting in any actual work. And I think that might be at the core of a lot of it, is like, it seems like this kind of get out of jail free card and that's how it's being portrayed.
Well, it could be.
It could be, honestly. And
Who's to say? Nobody knows.
yeah. And I'm not saying that it's not useful for that, but
Sure.
a lot of time, a lot of the people who are seeking out these kinds of treatments are actually like in dire need of something that will actually work for them.
It's
in
just
their
pop
unique
psychology of
circumstance.
it all. I think that's a really good way to put
Yeah.
it. Okay, so our last big point I think that we should talk about is the question that I got asked the most. What's going on with Jen and Zach? I don't even know where to begin, honestly. Here's the biggest caveat that I'll give you. Who the actually knows what's happening in this relationship? This could all be for show. This could all be bullshit. I'd like to think that it's not, but it could be. Like, reality TV shows are famous for getting lovely edits that might not be accurate to what actually happened. So for me, like, as a therapist and not their therapist, to come in here and say, like, this is what's happening, like, I just can't do that.
It's all speculation.
It's all speculation. Like, the only thing that I have at my fingertips is what's portrayed in this reality TV show, and how much of that isn't bullshit. Who the knows? So I'm going to give the biggest of caveats with that. Like, it could be better in real life. It could be worse in real life. Like, I don't know. What I think holds true is I think Zach acted like an emotionally abusive asshole last season. I think that stands true no matter what. I don't think we can change that. I think he went into this season hoping for a redemption arc. I think he got more screen time for that purpose, wants to redeem himself in the eyes of the people. Regardless of how he behaves, I'm sure it's not easy to be the person that everybody hates on the internet. Like, regardless of whether you think he's in the wrong or not, I think that would be hard. And I think he honestly holds a lot of contempt for Jen. And my theory is the contempt that he holds for Jen comes from her decision to stray from the traditional Mormon experience. Like, she has decided to walk away for something that, at least in the first season, seemed like they held dear. And now
well, and
she seems more in than he is.
I specifically remember them all making fun of her on like one of those first getaways because she was the one who would always wear her garments.
Mm-hmm. And
obviously,
now
it seems like that's changed.
Half out. Like, they had that fishing trip where they talked about, and he was like, I don't really know. I don't really want to go anymore. Or like, I'm not really invested, but Jen kind of still wants to go. And so it seems like things have shifted there, which is also interesting. But I think Jen being the breadwinner brings up things for him. And I think instead of dealing with it and coping with that and figuring out what's happening there, it just comes out as contempt at Jen, which is what happens in a lot of people's relationships, right? Like, what's happening on the surface isn't necessarily indicative of what's happening underneath. Like, we usually have much bigger fish swimming under the surface that need attention. I think Jen lying this season was a dumb plot point. I think it was mainly hyped up by Jesse and Demi, who were like fixated on her lying. I also think it's totally possible that she did lie because these were things that maybe Zach didn't know about, and she was trying to prevent blowback from him about these things. I think that's totally reasonable. But I mean, this doesn't really stand out to me as a major plot point. I think she was going through a lot, and I don't see she doesn't seem like a pathological like liar. Like, I think Demi tries to like paint her out to be, and even Jesse there for a minute. Like, I don't know what that was about. I think that was just a weird fixation this season.
And what did it even base around? It was like the Affleck connection that they brought. Supposedly, Zach's family brought up the whole relation to Ben Affleck as a joke, and
she took it seriously.
She took it seriously. Yeah, at least that's how he was trying to paint it. Like, oh, you thought that we were being serious, which is like the easiest thing to say when you've been caught in saying something stupid.
Sure.
Is, oh, you thought I was serious?
Or maybe she wasn't in on the joke. Like, who knows?
Honestly, who's to say? What was the other thing? The whole, gambling his tuition money away or something like that.
He's not going to want to own up to that.
Yeah, these are hard things to have to own up to when you get caught on them.
Uh-huh.
So, I don't know if that's the truth or not.
Nobody knows.
And the whole involvement of all these other people just made things so much more difficult. And now the husbands are like buddies and they're making their own TikToks and everything. So there's those relationships, and it just complicates things so much that, who knows? Who knows? We've
Who
said
knows?
that probably 50 times at this point.
I want to make it very clear because I don't want anybody coming in here and being like, you're assuming. Well, like everybody assumes when it
Yeah.
comes to reality TV. Like that's the whole point, right? Like people make up their own narratives and stories about what's going on.
Well, and I think that there's a lot of plausibility with what you said about him having resentment toward Jen because he didn't follow through on his medical school dreams, because at the end of last season, they were talking about going to New York. And then somewhere in between, he changed to Arizona and then ended up not going.
Yep.
Or dropping out or something like that. But he's not going to be pursuing medical school anymore, at least for the time being.
I think another interesting thing to bring up here around like sex and consent and all of that was the whole like Chippendales thing that happened between the two of them, and then the whole dancing thing that happened at Jesse's party. And I think this is a perfect representation of like people pleasing in Mormonism. So like due to conditioning that she's had her entire life up to this point, and maybe even like worry around like being embarrassed, she didn't explicitly say, hey, I don't want any part of this, at least based on what we saw from the show. I think she might feel differently, and maybe there were other conversations, but who knows. But stick with me. I think this is an area that all Mormon women have experienced, is people pleasing or even trying to protect people's feelings like around me. And I think with therapy, friend support, good community support, whatever, deconstruction, she could get to a place where she would, in that situation, like stand up in front of those girls and be like, I'm not fucking participating in this. I don't want any part of this bullshit. I mean, I think it's funny that you guys plan this, whatever, like it's not a big deal, but I'm not going to be the one sitting in this chair. I don't want your husband dancing up on me, so pick somebody else.
And especially when they're picking her after he was the one who blew his fucking top.
For sure.
When she didn't even end up going to she wasn't participating in the whole Chippendales thing. She left and felt guilty about it, and he still blew his top over it.
He still freaked out anyway.
And so for them to kind of like make a spectacle of it was also fucked up. I'm assuming that's producer involvement and everything like that. So
I just hope, I'm not saying, like, I want to be clear. I'm not saying she did anything wrong here, and she was even giving like the vibes at the beginning of it. It just seemed off, and somebody could have been in tune with her and said like, hey, are you okay? But like the thing is this is an area, in my opinion, that women, especially who grew up in patriarchal religions, high demand religions, can really step into their power with this and being like, dude, I'm not fucking participating in this. Like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
Like, and even though it's in front of all those people and all of that, like, it becomes a response. Like, we are responsible for ourselves, right? Like, no matter how much conditioning, no matter how the things in life that we've endured, like at the end of the day, the only people that are going to advocate for you 100% of the time is yourself. So this is why it's so important for women who have grown up in these experiences to get support and navigate deconstruction and therapy and do all these things so they could be in a position like that and not think twice about being like, I'm not into this. Like, I'm going to go sit over there. Y'all want to keep doing this. You do you. That's fine. And like, I get there's more pressure because it's a reality TV show. But like, I think this brings up an interesting conversation around like how we can help women step back into power and consent dynamics and what is like, taking charge of the situation and not letting people, like, I'm not saying that they potentially didn't do anything wrong here because they didn't necessarily inform her of what was going on. She didn't necessarily have informed consent in this situation. She says the other girls disagree. But I think people pleasing in general can be a way we avoid causing discomfort for ourselves because we're worried about causing discomfort for others. So like eventually for a lot of people, and I'm not saying this is what's happening here, but something to think about like with your own journey or other people is it becomes avoidance when that comes up. Like, I don't want to cause discomfort for the other person, so I'm just not going to say anything and I'm going to endure. Like sometimes in therapy, in that example, we would call it like self-abandonment, where it's like, I'm going to ignore my own needs. I'm going to ignore what I want and need in the situation. And I'm going to prioritize somebody else's feelings above my own. Like, it usually doesn't end well when we do that. But if you grew up in a patriarchal religion, we're conditioned to do that. It's everybody else above yourself. So like, it's not necessarily your fault that you behave this way. It's what all of us were taught. It's just what we want to do with that. Like, what am I going to do when I'm in those situations now? Because there comes a point where I am responsible for the situations that I am in to some degree. And I'm not talking about her relationship. I'm talking about when the girls like propose stupid shit that they want her to participate in, and her being able to be like,
Right.
dude, fuck off. I'm not interested in that. Like, that's what I would want for her. And again, I'm not saying that she's doing anything wrong because she's still in the throes of Mormonism very deeply right now. But I want this to be kind of like a jumping off point for, can the show demonstrate that kind of behavior and allow other people to see like, oh, it's like, I can stand up for myself. I can on my growth healing journey get to a point where I say I'm not interested. I don't want to do this. This is uncomfortable for me. And that be okay. And it doesn't matter how everybody else feels about it. And it doesn't matter what the producers say. And it doesn't matter what my friends think, because I'm advocating for me in that moment. Like, that's what I'm hoping this does, is creates kind of a jumping off point for how can we talk more deeply about people pleasing and the impact of it on Mormon culture in general. Like, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying Jen did anything wrong. I am not shaming her for her behavior at all. I'm saying, can we have a larger conversation around how we help women get out of this thing that so many of us were forced in, myself included, for so long.
Right. Well, and I just feel bad for her because she has humans alive. She's going to have conversations like this with those children about these kinds of situations.
Mm-hmm.
And she's going to have to reflect on those situations where she's like, I'm telling you guys this right now, and I was not able to do it for myself.
Yeah.
So hopefully she can use this as an opportunity to break the cycle. Hopefully, they won't have such a awful environment to grow up in that the Mormon church has fostered for so many people out there.
Exactly. The part that I'll say about her pregnancy, this is going to be controversial. So if you don't like this, I don't really care. But one, I think pregnancy roulette is always a bad idea, unless everybody in the room is pregnant and happy about it. Like, I think it's generally always a bad idea to do pregnancy roulette. And that felt like a producer plant type idea to me anyway. Did not love that. Seemed really insensitive. Like, I'm a Demi hater this season, but it seemed really insensitive to me as a person to know about what she was going through. And then, or even people who didn't know about Macy's pregnancy. She's going through infertility too. Like, maybe we shouldn't do pregnancy roulette because that's going to trigger a bunch of people. You know what I mean? So, like, that's my opinion on pregnancy roulette. I generally think it's always a bad idea. Or unless everybody's not pregnant and thrilled with that. Like, we're going to celebrate the fact that none of us are pregnant or all of us are pregnant. Or
everybody's going to be thrilled about the outcome either way.
Right. Like, this is a dicey area to be dealing with something like that in my opinion. But I think Jen's pregnancy and mental health arc are so intertwined. I love that there was some conversation around this season because, like, as you know, I've had my own postpartum journey with mental health issues, and I don't think we talk about it enough. So I do love that the show was giving some platform to even hopefully normalize how many women experience very severe symptoms, mental health symptoms during pregnancy. And that if you are going through that there is help, there is support, there is things that you can do. Like, you don't just have to suffer through it. It's not a normal pregnancy symptom. Like, what Jen was experiencing on the show, generally speaking, in terms of mental health during pregnancy, was not normal at all. So I'm glad that there is at least conversation and awareness around that. So the thing that I hate about Mormonism and in a situation like this, you aren't afforded all of your options. I'm not going to say that Jen didn't want this child because it seems like she's in a happy place with the pregnancy now, and I wish her all the best however she feels about it, right? But women would benefit from someone telling them, you have more options than just give up your kid for adoption or tough it out. I know, again, this is going to be controversial, but this is why abortion is important. And this is why, statistically speaking, the majority of women who get abortions are mothers. The majority of women who get abortions already have multiple children. Statistically speaking, they are the highest demographic in terms of who is getting abortions. And I think this is a good illustration of a scenario where, again, it's not the journey that Jen wanted, and that's fine. But I think having that option makes a difference, because if I don't want this pregnancy, I would probably be suicidal too. If I don't want this pregnancy, of course it's going to bring up things mentally, emotionally. And I'm not saying that those things were correlated or separate or whatever, because who knows Jen's brain and what's going on in there. But I think that's why having abortion as an option, even if you're not going to take it, is good, because it allows for it's informed consent in terms of decision making, right? I have options at my disposal for what I want to do if I'm in this situation. And no, you don't have to push through. if you're too overwhelmed with the kids you have and you don't want anymore. No, you don't have to push through if your mental health is shit and you don't want to deal with a pregnancy. No, you don't have to push through if you just don't want the kid. Again, I know this is probably going to be controversial, but this is my stance. Abortion keeps women alive. Abortion keeps women here. But like, that wasn't an option for her. Unfortunately, it seems like she's worked through it. And maybe in her mind, she doesn't agree with the Mormon philosophy on that and she would have had one. Who knows? But in Mormonism, abortion is strictly forbidden. Strictly forbidden. There's absolutely no circumstances unless the health of the mother is in jeopardy, because Mormonism is more progressive than a lot of religions for having that
and
exception.
Rape and incest,
yeah. All things considered, I think it's just a missed opportunity, again, in religious culture where women could benefit from an option that they might not even take, that they might not even want, and they might even disagree values-wise, and that's all fine. But like, when you're deep in Mormonism, the thought's not even going to occur to you. Like, you're not going to consider that as something that you could possibly pursue, let alone get your partner on board with something like that. So all I'm saying here is this is why abortion is fundamental and essential for women's health. And I'm thrilled for Jen, whatever she decided to do. And I hope that her mental health is better and she got support and she seems happy with this pregnancy. And I could not love that more for her. I just want everybody to have all the options available to them, regardless of circumstances.
Well, and imagine the dynamic that it could have made. Like, maybe it took a lot for her to come to terms, or maybe she's toughing it out and doing it with a smile or whatever. But if you have those other options, then, I mean, the more cards that you have in your hand, the more ways that you can play it. And then if you have some of those more drastic options, you can come to terms or be at peace with whatever decision that you choose to make, even if it isn't like terminating the pregnancy or anything like that. Just knowing that you have those tools
makes a difference.
Makes a huge difference. And someday I would hope that there is even more progressive ideas surrounding family planning and everything like that. That's one of those things that I am honestly not expecting to ever happen within the Mormon church. So I don't have my hopes up, but there are so many Mormon mothers out there who would be able to stand a chance still if they had more options than what the church is offering them.
Sure. You can probably hear him.
You can't see Baloney right now, but he's been in my lap pretty much the whole time. So if you've been watching me and you're like, damn, McKay's not listening because he's just looking down the whole time, it's because I'm petting Baloney. He's sitting in my lap. I'm taking advantage of this.
Being the chosen person?
Being the chosen person. Let's do some lightning round asking things that people were...
Instagram questions?
Asking on Instagram to wrap things up. That's kind of the meat and potatoes of what we wanted to talk about today. But
please cover the therapy session. It felt invasive to watch. My personal opinion with therapy sessions is it's awkward for me to watch. I do feel like I shouldn't be in the room. Like, therapy is such a confidential, sacred space for me that it feels awkward for me to watch it. However, I will say
it's like a Mormon watching the temple ceremonies.
It just feels
on YouTube.
It feels forbidden almost. But here's what I'll say. I'm thrilled that they're platforming therapy as a solution to dealing with trauma, dealing with religious trauma, dealing with sexual abuse. Like, I'm thrilled that they put that out there and they picked a lovely person to do it. Natasha is an extremely experienced ex-Mormon therapist, and they couldn't have picked a more
excommunicated
Mormon therapist.
You know, she's the cream
culturally
of the crop.
Mormon therapist. Like, she's fantastic. So I'm thrilled that they platformed, like, they didn't like pick a life coach, right? Or like something weird, because I could see
in
them
this
doing
climate,
that.
a life coach,
right? But I was thrilled with that, but it did feel invasive. And I always have wondered, it's never happened to me, but I've always wondered how having a camera in the room impacts the therapeutic process. Like, I think Natasha's a fantastic therapist no matter what. I'm just speaking personally for me. I don't know that I could handle a camera being in the room, because I feel like it would just be such a distraction to me away from, like, the focus. But I love the fact that they're platforming how to deal with mental health issues in a, like, evidence-based way, essentially. Would love to hear your thoughts on Layla dissociating during fights. Is that what she said she's doing? Because I do laugh at every time she says something, or like, what was it? She shares something that nobody knows that she's the one that shared it, and then Taylor says it, and she's like, Right. It looks like
Gives
she's going to
that
like
little face.
disappear from the room. I don't know if that's actually what's happening. I mean, dissociating, generally speaking, happens from great stressors, stress, anxiety, could even be from like very severe mental illness. Some people dissociate more often. Dissociation is a spectrum. Everybody dissociates. If you've ever driven to work and forgot how you got there and like you're at work,
You just suddenly become aware that you're driving.
then you've dissociated before. Dissociation is a spectrum. But it is interesting to me that I think this is also a good example of like, she's also young. I feel like women in general, culturally, you see this? He's holding my hand. I feel like there's a lot of culture, religious or not, that women can't take up space. They can't, I don't know, they can't be center stage solving their own problems. Like they're supposed to be acted upon instead of acting for themselves. And so it's interesting to me that when Layla gets involved in these things, like, and the opportunity comes to talk about it, she's like, ooh. Like she steps back in that moment, which I almost wonder about people pleasing, right? I have to like be aware of who it might impact in the room, like who might be mad at me that I shared this information with Taylor. Like there's a lot of kind of people pleasy dynamics that are happening in order for that to continue moving forward. But I hope she talks more next season. I do, or the second half.
Yeah, the second half. It does seem like she's kind of taken a new role with the that last little bit of the last episode. So
Definitely more front and center, that's for sure.
interested to see in how that will unfold.
Why don't you think they talk about their faith on the show much at all? Because it's fucking boring. Because it's the worst. Like, I literally put that in my notes. Like, you cannot, there are things about Mormonism that you can glamorize, but they are few and far between. And going to church, going to the temple for 3 hours, wearing garments.
It's boring, dude.
All of those are not it. I can't glamorize that. The temples are pretty, but I can't glamorize you going and sitting in there bored to tears for 2 hours, listening to an old man talk over a recording and doing a bunch of mimed motions of cutting your own throat. Like, I can't glamorize that, and the show can't either.
Right. Like, really the only thing that they can do is just be like, this belief is weird, which is generally what we're doing. Like, why do you believe that? It's so insane that we used to believe that and so forth. But, like, the Mormon experience is so incredibly dull outside of that. Like,
nobody cares. It's so boring. There's nothing exciting about it.
If you need to know what we're talking about, just look up a video of FSY dances. That's about as crazy as it gets.
Or sacrament
and
meeting.
Even then, it's just so dull.
Or like, I always repost these on TikTok anytime I see them. I saw one today. It's like, it was a Mormon wedding, and the top comment was like, I can tell this is a soda fueled event. Because it's very obvious to people when there's this like weird Mormon culture at play, especially if it's like the traditional modest Mormon and not the like influencer-y Mormon that we see now. But it's not glamorous. Like, it would be so boring in terms of reality TV. Also, they don't allow cameras in chapels, and so I'm pretty sure that's why we've never seen them in church before. Yeah.
Especially on a show where the church has made a
statement. Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's no way they're getting permission for that.
Someone said they saged their home after the fight. Is this normal / accepted by Mormons? No. No, this would probably fall under, like, I have a feeling a bishop would be unhappy with that.
That would be, essentially, this is just like a nothing. If the average person would be like, well, that's not doing anything. And then, like, maybe someone who's a little more scrupulous would be like, this is witchcraft or whatever.
Right, you're not calling on the authority of Christ.
Yeah.
You're using something else.
It's just putting smoke in your home as far as they know. So yeah, anything that's not like priesthood oriented, then it's like a total make-believe thing in their eyes.
Yeah, they're not gonna be thrilled with that. Are there some probably Mormons that will do it? Maybe. But I mean, isn't it cultural appropriation in most contexts anyway?
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. We need a scale of what sexual terms mean for Mormons compared to society.
Oh, this is good. This is good.
Every bishop would love that.
First base, holding hands. Second base.
Make out?
No. Yeah, make out, I guess.
Yeah.
No. It would just be kissing. Then making out would be third base.
Okay.
And then
home run over the shirt.
No, that's not allowed. marriage, baby. Let's go. Home run.
If you're playing by the rules. See, I didn't play
That's
by the rules, so I
scoring.
wouldn't know. I think like they did a little episode this season talking about like they had like a sex educator come on, which anytime that's happening, as long as they're like properly educated, I love that. This is a good example of Mormons leaning into the black and white of everything. Because it's not like, as a couples therapist, like as somebody who has a lot of training in couples and works primarily with couples and a lot of Mormons, when we're talking about sex stuff in general, like we're toe dipping into the concept of sex in general, because Mormons have such a like shallow view of sex in general, and that's Mormonism is largely to blame. Mormon culture is largely to blame. Like lots of kids don't even get sex talks from their parents, and they find out about things on the internet or from porn, or like there's a lot of misinformation there. But like this is the tendency I see is like the girls are trying to get themselves comfortable with like something on the Mormon scale would be very severe. Like I look at kink as just a regular everyday thing for the average person. For a Mormon to introduce them to like the principles of sex, kink is like way the over there. Like, it is way the hell over there.
We're not even in the same ballpark.
Nope, we're not even
in
close.
the same state, honestly.
And eventually they will get to a point that it's on a spectrum that probably doesn't seem so foreign and far away. But in the beginning, it does not help anyone to start that way, right? Like, when I'm talking with couples who have no knowledge of sex or very, very limited, like...
Or even anatomy.
Like, we're not bringing out whips. We're starting, like, I start generally with the 7 principles of, like, sexual health is where I start. And that is very, very basic. And I will also teach anatomy. I've had to do it before. I do it all the time. Like, we start with the very basics. And so for them to do sex education is like, here, grab this whip and pull out feathers. And, you know, like to the average, like to you and I, that might be like, wow, okay, vanilla whoop-de-doo over here. Good job, you guys. But like to the average Mormon, that is foreign. And don't get me wrong, there might be some kinky Mormons out there. There
definitely are.
There's a Facebook group called Latter-day Kink. You know, they're out there. They're out there by all means, but they do not represent the majority of the Mormon population by any means. Like, you have to remember, church leadership banned oral in the 80s. And so, and they never walked that back. They just kind of quietly buried it and ignored it. Right? So, like, this is what we're dealing with in terms of sex education. It's not it. It is not it. So in terms of like a scale, I'd love one, because every Mormon couple I meet, every person I meet, it's different. And it's so hard to start there because you never know what a person has. And some of it has to be undone. Like some of it is things that they learned from friends that's inaccurate, or porn that's unrealistic. And like you have to do some undoing before you can get to the building. But that's just, anyway, that's my rant as a person who does this
that whole
every day.
Sexologist thing was very hard to watch anyway.
It was very cringe.
I
honestly.
did not. I don't.
No shade to the educator. It was the girls were being weird and
shade to her, honestly, too. The way that she presented a lot of things, it was just like
the whole thing felt like very contrived and weird.
Right.
Thoughts on Demi's claim that Taylor is a narcissist. I saw a TikTok last night and I shared it with McKay that a therapist that came across my For You page was like, I'm going to start charging people that if you're in like my general vicinity and you call somebody a narcissist, you have to put a quarter in my jar.
It's like a swear jar.
And that's kind of how I feel. Everyone and their mom is a narcissist these days. And I think the unfortunate thing about that is it takes away from the people who actually are dealing with people in their lives who are actually narcissistic and abusive.
Right.
Because like everybody's ex is a narcissist. It's just not the case. Lots of people on this planet have narcissistic tendencies. A lot of people have narcissistic tendencies. Like, I would argue that the majority of the population probably has 1 or 2 in there. Some other people might be affected more than others. But the actual incidence rate for narcissistic personality disorder is very low, like incredibly low. So I think it takes away from the power of it a little bit. If you want to say someone had, like, you guys have heard me on this channel a million times. I say narcissistic tendencies every time, right? There are some people that might have actual narcissism. They might be people who have been diagnosed narcissism. I've worked with them before. Like, they're definitely out there, but I think it's unhelpful largely to label everyone as a narcissist for behavior that's not. because it makes it really hard for therapists in the professional sense, because it takes us a minute to kind of tease out what you're actually talking about. Because when someone comes to me and says my ex is a narcissist, like, I have an image in my head of what that looks like, and it's pretty severe. And if someone tells me like, oh, he was kind of a dick to me sometimes, or oh, he cheated on me, because narcissism has become like this encapsulated definition of so many things that, like, when people come to me and say that, I'm like, what does that mean? Tell me more. Like, I want to believe you. I want to validate that for you, but I need more
Right.
information, right? So, like, it takes away from that, I think, and it makes it harder to kind of narrow in on what problematic behaviors are if everybody's a narcissist, you know?
I feel like it's I'm turning 30 this year, so birds have slowly encroached on my life. Recently I learned a little, what do you call that? Mnemonic device, I guess. When you want to know if something is a crow or a raven, if you have to ask, it's a crow. If it's a raven, you'll know. That's
Mm,
probably
yeah,
exactly like you would be able to tell.
it's pretty intense. Like
Like
Ruby.
it's
Look at Ruby Frankie. I would probably argue that Ruby would fit that definition pretty clearly.
right.
And not everybody is a Ruby, right? So, like, everybody has their capacity for
Right.
what you're going to do with those tendencies and if you're going to work on them and things. So I think, like, Demi saying that Taylor is a narcissist, I think is bullshit. Does Taylor have narcissistic tendencies? Probably. I think in order to be as successful as you are
Yeah.
on social media, you kind of have to be to
She's
some
got a big
extent.
ego.
Yeah. Like, I think, look at our influencers, look at the
Right.
Kardashians, like, look at the framework
Totally.
for a lot of this, like, narcissism, like, the narcissistic tendencies, I think, is part of what works, is we look at these people and
Mhm.
we're like, how are you like that? Like, why are you so selfish? This is insane. Like, it's part of what makes for good TV. We did notice the Visions of Glory reference. That was one of our questions. We have a whole series on Visions of Glory, the book, if that is interesting to you at all. It is probably one of the wackest Mormon things out there.
It is so
And it's tied in with like every Mormon criminal. And so if you're
right.
interested in that at all, we have a video about that
We have several streams where that's where we were talking
where we
about
broke
it.
down things from
Yeah.
the book. Yeah. There's a lot more that we could get into, obviously.
Yes. There
But
just
we're running out of time.
just go and watch the show. I mean, the show is a lot longer than this little recap is going to be. So if you want to know about something, that's what the comments are for. If there's something specific that you want to hear about, get in the comments. If you're in the live chat right now is your time to get that answer. But yeah, I look at all the comments and try to answer as many as I can, especially when you've got interesting questions. So, but if you would like to see more of the shit show, you can hit the subscribe button down below. If you'd like to go be above and beyond and be just the choice, the cream of the crop, you can join the channel as a member, or you can go over to Patreon and join up on the Patreon. It's the same stuff on both of
which
those
one you like
sides.
better.
Whichever one works for you best. We wanted to give the options. There are I hate Patreon, but there are a lot of patrons, so we're going to continue using
I don't
Patreon.
mind Patreon.
I had a bad experience with the app this week, so I'm a little bit bitter. But that's where we were doing with our patrons and the members. We were doing our watch parties for this. We're going to continue the watch parties. The wrap up reunion episode is going to be coming up at the start of the month. We will watch it the day that it comes out because we're caught up now, finally. And then when the other half of the season goes on, we'll continue our watch parties. We do 2 episodes a week, so it's not overwhelming. It's also late.
Yep.
And
Sorry. I have a
obviously
kid.
when we're doing it on weeknights, we don't want to keep people up too long or, force them to miss out because they are too tired or whatever.
Also, I've been thinking about trying to do something with this and finally settled on a good way to do it. So if you are a Patreon or a member, we will now be adding a monthly Jordan's Therapy Corner.
Yay!
So the purpose of this, it is not therapeutic advice. I am not your therapist. This is just general mental health topics and conversations like you've seen me do today. I'm not going to give you specific advice for your very specific situation. General situations, I'm happy to answer questions about and things, but the purpose of this is so I can offer mental health content and make it affordable. So what I've decided to do, there will be a link in the description below for a suggestion box. It's an anonymous suggestion box. Don't put any of your private information in there. It's an anonymous, confidential box, right? But it's like, it's the internet, so don't go putting anything wild in there. But like if there's things that you want me to talk about or certain scenarios where it's like, how do you deal with a mom that doesn't respect your boundaries, or how do you navigate religious trauma from this lens, or there's certain topics or things that you want to hear about, that is what the suggestion box is for. And then once a month, I think towards the end of the month, I will post a schedule so you know the days, but there will be at least an hour of me talking with you about these topics, answering questions, things of that nature. So that will be under the $3 tier. So if you are a $3 Patreon member, it will be available to you starting the end of this month. I will get that day posted soon.
And I've been slacking. You also can get bloopers and stuff like that. I've been slacking lately with the bloopers because I feel like we sit down and we're just business.
We're business because
we haven't gotten any good bloopers lately. This one, there should be a couple good bloopers.
Maybe we'll do like a cooking with McKay to
maybe
it or something.
We have to do something like that soon. If you like more up-to-date information, follow us on Instagram. Jordan posts on the Instagram stories a lot of useful information,
cats,
shit posting, cats, announcements, things of that nature. And you can follow us on Instagram as well. You can find us at both of those at Jordan and McKay. And then our Discord, which is where we do the watch parties. So if you're interested, familiarize yourself with the Discord. You can join our server with the invite link down in the description down below. Find some like-minded people who enjoy our content. It's not all about us over there. So go and find where you fit in. But that's going to do it for today. We love you all. We appreciate your continued support and listening to us ramble about reality TV shows, even though, is it that deep? I don't know.
Probably not.
Probably not. But we like to add a little bit of context and things anyway. So live your lives. Don't keep it a secret unless you want to. Share as much or as little as you like. Get that reality TV show bag. And we'll see you next time.